Do you know, I never thought I would be an artist. Once upon a time, I had a landscaping business, a van, and all of life's normal costs and worries. Spring 2022, I got a stomach bug and basically never really got better. I got a diagnosis of something called chronic fatigue syndrome. This was pretty scary because no one really knows what it is. They don't know how to cure it. There's not very much support. I was laid low, and as the weeks turned to months, I began to realise that if I was ever going to get better, I just had to strip my life completely back, pare everything down, and just focus on my recovery. One of the things this gave me space to do was paint. I'd always had an inkling I might like oil painting, and suddenly I had the time to do it. I realised that it was something that I could do that, when I got caught up in the flow of it, made the days go by without me feeling rotten. Unfortunately, I just couldn't continue with the landscaping business, so I had to give all that up, which involved letting down some clients and selling the van, which wasn't very nice at all. So now my mission is to make a living from painting full time. And I want to share with you how I'm doing. Firstly, because so much of this is not just about painting, it's about making a living, it's about the earnings, the money, and I want to make that part of the story right now. And second of all, because I recognise that it's a big dream for a lot of people to make a living doing something creative. You're about to discover that I simply do not have all the answers. But on the other hand, I might be able to add a few little drops to the great bucket of human knowledge. At the end, I also want to share the lesson that I've learnt from reviewing these numbers. So let's get stuck in. I want to acknowledge something right at the beginning. Not everyone is afforded the privilege of being able to prioritise their health first and foremost. I have had a lot of challenges over the last couple of years, but I do recognise that it is a privilege, at the very least, to have a go at doing this. Right, on to the juicy stuff. How much did I make from my paintings? To answer that, I have to track back to kind of autumn of 2022. And basically I decided I was just going to paint and paint and paint and paint. And eventually a friend suggested that maybe I could put on an exhibition of my work in their shop. I basically took all the work that I'd done up to that point, which, looking back, I think probably was inconsistent. I think there were some real gems in there, but possibly a few real stinkers as well. My expectations were fairly low, but actually something amazing happened. I have this really clear memory of a woman coming in to have a look while I was hanging. So the paintings weren't even on the walls, and she found something she liked, and she took it. And that was my first painting ever sold. And I think I sold either 11 or 12 paintings to the tune of £3,186, $4,019. Yeah, I mean, I was over the moon. I just thought, oh, I've cracked it. I've found a way of making a living, found something I can do that makes me well, and I can keep at it, sell some more pictures, and I'm going to be okay. So, you know, full of my newfound confidence, I thought I've got to do another one of these. So I planned another exhibition for April. I think my work got better and I got more consistent, and I put together this cracking little exhibition, and it was a bit of a disappointment. I think I sold 5 or 6 paintings to the tune of £1,420, so $1,791. And to be frank, my confidence did take a bit of a knock after that. I suppose I'd really hung my hopes on being able to make a living from painting, kind of being back into the role of the breadwinner. After the expenses of the months before, I hadn't made very much at all, really. This is sort of excruciatingly embarrassing looking back, but I think I also just felt like something a bit tawdry had happened, that I'd been a bit desperate to sell my work, and in doing so it kind of taken the magic out of painting. I think there were some positives, and the first is that it was actually strangely freeing to not have such a success as the first one, because it made me realise that actually it was a bit of a fool's errand to try and paint sort of imagined market. So I just began to paint a bit more for myself. It also made me think that whatever it was I did next and focused my energies on should be something a little bit more positive, and perhaps that I ought to relinquish worrying about the money. I basically decided that I'd auction a load of paintings for a charity. I sold a good few. Again, it wasn't quite as good as the first attempt. The auction raised £1,455, so $1,835. I gave 70% of this away to the charity, and that left me with £435 or $548. Lastly, in terms of income, I made what we might call some walk-up sales. A couple of people came in and bought a painting. I sold a few lithographs and some greetings cards, and in total that was £950.66 or $1,198. So the year in total gave me sales of £5,991.66, which is $7,558. I haven't really added this number up before, so it's quite something to contemplate. It makes me feel pretty good. It's still incredible to me that people want to buy my work. On the other hand, as we're about to discover, painting is quite an expensive undertaking, so not all this money is profit. So what does it cost to make art full time? So my biggest cost by far is this place. It cost me £150 a month, or £1,800 a year. So that's $189 a month, or $2,270 a year. It might seem like a bit of an extravagance, but to be honest, it's essential. Not only so that I don't ruin the carpet at home, but also just for my health. Quite quickly realised that actually having that focus, being able to get out of the house, was really vital. It was pretty basic in here, so the next chunk of change went on a few upgrades to make it just a place I could work in all weathers, at all times of the day, log burner, lighting, that kind of thing. So those expenses were £638, which is about $804 that I spent on refurbishments in the year. The next cost is art supplies. As you know, art supplies aren't cheap, and I have a whole load that I need to keep me going. Terps, gesso, brushes, knives, charcoal, but the biggest one by far is oil paint. I don't use the most expensive oil paint. The brand that I use has a kind of big daddy of paints called Rembrandt, and that's too dear. So instead I use one called Van Gogh, which is kind of like the student artist level stuff. But even so, my art bill for the year was £718 or $905. These days I paint on MDF, and I also make all my own frames from scratch. Fortunately, my neighbour here is a joiner, so I do get quite a few offcuts coming my way for free. But there are other costs like screws, glues, finishes, oils, that kind of thing. And the bill for that came in at £418.67, which is $527. Actually running an exhibition has quite high costs. In my case, the big one was booze, which I completely overestimated how much people drink at an exhibition. £246 or $310 I spent on booze. On top of that, there were some small fees for the space that I used. That was £60 or $75. And printing leaflets, which is how I marketed the exhibition, which was £100 or $126. I always think that in life there are fun things to spend money on, and then there's boring stuff to spend money on, and unfortunately there was some of that too. Things like postage, insurance, I got a basic website, that kind of thing added up to £350 and 4p, which is $441. So in total, all those costs included, over the year I spent £4,344.45 on making art, which is $5,481. Now we know both what I made and what I spent. So in total, what was my profit from painting last year? Well, in total, I made £1,647.21 from painting. I recognise this isn't a living, but I'm actually pretty proud of this. I made this money despite being fairly unwell quite a lot of the time. It made a big difference to our family to have this money, and I also think it's a good foundation for my art career. I went out to the world and I asked the question, would you like to buy some paintings? And one or two people did. I do find myself feeling a bit dismayed by the hole left in that by the overheads. But there are two things that I think it's worth noting there. First is that these are fixed costs, and that hopefully they shouldn't go up too much. They should remain much as they are. The second thing is that so much of this mission is about getting better, and I shouldn't forget that, and I shouldn't perhaps be quite so hard on myself, which in fact leads me on, I think, to my next important detail, which is how much work did I do to make this money? Through a lot of this period, I didn't work what you might call a traditional 9 to 5. I probably got down here at 9 or 9:30, but at midday I would need a break for at least a couple of hours to kind of recover my energies. I'd then get back to work and perhaps work till 4, maybe 3:30, at which point I'd go and do the school run. There were definitely days when I couldn't work at all. So I think there's a plan here and a lesson. The plan is a simple one. I need to sell some more paintings, and because the costs are kind of fixed, the more paintings I sell, the better I will do. The lesson is an interesting one. Now I look at these numbers all together, there's something here that I think I need to heed, and that is that most of the income I made last year came through exhibitions. This is quite hard for me to hear because I found doing the exhibitions hard, not just because there's a lot of work involved in actually just making it happen, but they're also quite uncomfortable. Something strangely vulnerable about putting all of this stuff that you've put so much work into and that you really care about into a white room for other people to peer at. On the one hand, it is amazing when people come, and doubly amazing if they buy something, but it can also feel quite gutting and disappointing if things don't quite go to plan. But looking at these numbers, I think I've just got to take a deep breath and get a couple of dates in the diary. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I will be fascinated to revisit this with you in a year's time to see how things are looking then. In the meantime, I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts, and look forward to continuing the conversation in the comments section. All the best. Over and out.